Typically when I cover Gran Turismo news, it tends to be one bit of information, maybe two. This time I'm consolidating three things in particular into one video, just for the sake of not making multiple little ones. So the third one requires a massive, a colossal, a moon-sized grain of salt. So obviously don't get your hopes up too much for that one, but it does concern a Renault Espace F1. Like I said, don't get too excited, and if anyone was to get excited, it would be me, given that it's my favourite car from the entire Gran Turismo series, but the first two are much more set in stone, and for one thing, we can either have confirmation of these things very soon, in the case of the second one, and in the case of the first one, we can already see it, because it's this, a racing version, or at least a more race-honed version, of the Genesis Vision GT car. I know that many people don't care, but we did talk about this car months ago, around a similar time to when we first saw the Genesis in action. Somebody in the comments actually mentioned seeing on the, I think it was Genesis channel version of the trailer, something like that, that was different to the Gran Turismo one. You could see kind of a race version just creeping out from behind the car for like a fraction of a second. It appeared to have a bigger wing, a chin splitter, and I personally assumed it would be, as we've seen with a couple of other of these VGT cars, a Group 1 variant. It would have made sense, we've seen that happen before, and it would be perfect to have alongside the Group 4s and Group 3s that we've got from Genesis. It would appear though, at least according to this car's spec, that seems highly unlikely at best, because if this is the only version that they bring with no Group 1 variant, it has 1500 horsepower, which is of course even more than the already tremendously quick normal version, normal, inverted commas there, but this one having 1500 pretty much makes it absolutely impossible to be a Group 1 unless it's ridiculously neutered by balance of performance. So, like I said, unless we see two different versions of it added at the same time, which would have three in total, Tomahawk style, and in fact in the case of the Tomahawk even more than three, but you know what I mean, it seems unlikely that this will be a Group 1, which I think is kind of a shame, because a Group 1 would have had more potential use. Again, I know a lot of people don't care, but if you're going to add a racing version, Group 1 seems to kind of make sense. Now, on the topic of an update for Gran Turismo in June, well, those of you who have been checking your watches and checking your calendars will have noticed that today is pretty much the last occasion that could have happened. Thursday, the last Thursday of the month, is typically when we see it, so of course, no June update. Thankfully though, and here's the good news, we won't have to wait for too long to know what the next update will be, because at the same time as the live events going on the 6th of July, so not too far to wait, we will apparently be receiving more news on what the next update will be. Now, we may see more leaks or rumours closer to the time, whatever the case may be. Some of us will immediately have our minds go to the concept of new circuits perhaps. I would say temper your expectations on that one, because usually, if they're going to have some kind of reveal at said live events, and at least if it's in the case of a new circuit, which it still could be technically, but usually there would be a blank slot on one of the events for said circuit to go into, and that hasn't happened this time around. So in other words, unless it's a circuit which is not being showcased, which is possible but unlikely, it would depend, I guess, on the type of circuit. So let's say, for example, they were to add Pikes Peak, just hypothetically. I'm certainly not saying that, but just imagine if they did, or like a Goodwood Hill Climb. Well, chances are they wouldn't use that in a live event anyway, because you couldn't get the players all on the track. So that could be an occasion, if you had like a speciality event like that, or a circuit, or a location, the Moon, Goodwood, Pikes Peak. These events just don't naturally fall into being used in a live multiplayer setting. So that could happen in that sense, but I would say, like I said, temper your expectations in terms of it being a circuit. It is going to be interesting to see though, is this one of two things? Either they're just using the event because it happens to come up at a similar time, so they can just use it to, why not advertise the next update kind of thing, or this could be a new way of talking about updates instead of the usual silhouettes. I would personally lean more toward the first. I think that it could be something significant, but knowing Polyphony, I mean, I would just go full cynic on it and think they're probably just using it because the event's happening, so why not talk about the update at the same time? Now, the third thing, which is the most exciting of the three, and at the same time the least likely, if we're honest about it, is regarding a potential Renault Espace F1 being scanned by Polyphony. Now, this one comes from the Discord for the channel, and I may throw a screen grab in there or whatever, but I believe, if I recall correctly, this one came from Instagram, I think it was. Somebody had commented regarding the Renault being an awesome car or something like that to come to Gran Turismo. I don't recall the exact wording that they used, but the people involved in the museum, I believe it was actually the official account, responded saying that the car had been scanned by them, quote unquote. That can mean a lot of things, so like I said, take it with a huge grain of salt, and it happened almost a year ago, according to the date of these comments. So again, it's not like this is necessarily something I'm going to be getting my hopes up for, but if something like that were to arrive, well, I would say a Renault Espace F1 probably would be a fairly major announcement to make. It would also be kind of weird if this just so happened to be the same time that they were announcing this, given that, like I said, those comments were from like a year ago, so I don't think that's going to happen. And if anything, part of me thinks that if an Espace F1 were to come to Gran Turismo, surely they would, especially at this point, keep it as a day one vehicle. Imagine the sheer level of ridiculous clamour and fervour that would happen if we saw an Espace F1 in a trailer for the next game, whenever that happens. You know, even years down the line, a Gran Turismo 8 or whatever it's called by that point, you see an Espace F1 in that trailer, like opening shot, gold paint, big turbo fan wheels spinning, close-up shots, that screaming V10 in the background howling through like the deep forest tunnel or something. You can totally see that being a trailer vehicle, but I don't see that happening now. I, of course, hope to be wrong, but if I were in their position, I would certainly use it as a day one vehicle in the next game, because it seems almost like a waste to add it at this point as an update car. So that one, like I said, definitely is more of a grain of salt kind of thing, and we will have to see whether or not there is any significance to this July announcement, or if it's just what I think it is, which is kind of just they're doing the event anyway, so why not announce it then? And of course, I guess we'll see either way on the 6th. So stick around for more Gran Turismo news, especially on the 6th, I would guess, and of course, until next time, we'll see you then with more. But for now, thanks for watching.